Hi everyone, my name is Madison Fujii, and you are now listening to my final project book review for Business 564, Leadership and Organizational Behavior from Corban University for the Spring 2025 quarter on the book Bold Woman of the Bible, A Guide to Contemporary Leadership. I will be sharing a corporate training module in this presentation that combines leadership principles from the book and the course itself into a synthesized, cohesive training with a handout for organizations of all types to use internally. With these tools, you can train and become better leaders across all levels of an organization and use the handout, which we'll discuss at the end, to help guide your organization. Here are two links for your reference. The first will be a link to this recording so that you can refer back to it at any time. The second link will send you to the handout itself with complete instructions on how to use the handout, which is all included in a neat package. Let's start by introducing the book that will serve as one of the main sources of this training. This book is important because it explores leadership qualities of prominent biblical women such as Eve, Deborah, Esther, Ruth, and Mary, drawing parallels between their experiences and the challenges faced by contemporary women leaders. Each chapter presents historical and spiritual significance of these women's actions, emphasizing themes like courage, strategic thinking, empathy, integrity, resilience, servant leadership, and breaking gender stereotypes. The book connects biblical principles to modern leadership contexts, offering practical insights on decision-making, team building, emotional intelligence, and inclusive leadership. Ultimately, it serves as both a devotional and leadership manual, encouraging readers, especially women of faith, to lead with authenticity, purpose, and moral clarity in their personal and professional lives. So, how does this book relate to what we've learned in our leadership course? Even though the book is aimed for a female audience, there are insights that are useful for both genders and across demographics. In week 1, we studied leadership and organizational behavior. The book Bold Woman of the Bible reinforces these ideas through Deborah and Esther, who model integrity, judgment, and strong leadership under pressure. In week 2, we explored motivation. Ruth's unwavering loyalty and purpose-driven decisions reflect intrinsic motivation and ethical commitment, even in the face of adversity. In week 3, we focused on perception and decision-making. Esther's thoughtful, emotionally intelligent approach to risk shows how leaders must anticipate outcomes, manage bias, and choose wisely under pressure. In week 4, we examined team effectiveness. The book emphasizes collaboration and delegation, as seen in Deborah's ability to trust and empower others, hallmarks of an effective team leadership. In week 5, we addressed power and influence. These women demonstrate how moral authority and empathy, not control, can be powerful tools in influencing others and creating lasting change. In week 6, we learned about organizational design. Their adaptability and clarity of purpose reflect the importance of structure, communication, and values-aligned leadership in shaping team and organizational performance. Finally, in week 7, we focused on organizational change. Esther's willingness to challenge unjust systems and initiate transformation mirrors courageous, value-driven leadership can create meaningful change in today's workplaces. Altogether, there are many parallels between the course material and material covered in this book. Next, we'll discuss what key takeaways you'll learn as a result of the training offered in this presentation. Now that we summarize the book and how it relates to the coursework, how does it help us navigate our leadership strategies at our respective organizations? Here are the key outcomes you will gain to help you navigate your leadership development journey. The first is your organization will develop ethical, emotionally intelligent, and resilient leaders who foster trust, collaboration, and accountability across the organization. The second thing is that your organization will guide teams through a structured, phased approach to leadership growth, from self-awareness and team building to ethical decision-making and sustaining cultural change. Third, you'll embed leadership development into your company culture by making the process interactive, ongoing, and accessible at all levels of the organization through experiential learning and peer support. The last is you'll align leadership behaviors with organizational values and goals, ensuring that change is not only implemented, but sustained through continuous feedback, celebration, and mentorship. At the end of the training, you will receive one handout that clearly encapsulates everything in this presentation for your ease of use and application. Regardless of the kind of organization you're a part of, there is something to learn for each and every member from top to bottom. So let's dive into the analysis of the content learned in the book and course materials and how this can help you become a better leader at your workplace. Welcome to our first topic, strategic and courageous leadership. In this section, we'll focus on how bold, values-driven leadership helps organizations navigate uncertainty, make timely decisions, and build resilient teams. We'll draw from the book and leadership best practices to examine 3 models from Esther, Deborah, and Mary, and what they each teach us about leading with purpose and conviction in a business setting. Let's start with Esther. Her story shows how strategic courage, not just bravery, defines strong leadership. Faced with life-threatening stakes, Esther didn't rush in. She paused, planned, and acted with composure. Her ability to take decisive, values-aligned action under pressure is a perfect model for modern leaders facing tight timelines, stakeholder tension, or high-stakes decisions. Esther reminds us, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's thoughtful action despite it. That's what leaders need when conditions are unclear or imperfect. Now to Deborah, a prophetess and judge who led in crisis with clarity and agility. She wore many hats: advisor, strategist, and commander, while remaining grounded in her purpose. What makes Deborah relevant to today's leaders is her ability to adapt, delegate, and act proactively. She didn't just manage the moment, she mobilized others, a crucial skill in today's fast-moving, cross-functional environment. In business terms, effective leaders balance conviction with flexibility, especially during change, growth, or ethical challenges. Mary brings a different yet equally powerful model: humble servant leadership. She accepted her purpose quietly, leading through faith, not recognition. She's a reminder that great leadership isn't about control or charisma. It's about serving others, staying authentic, and leading with grace. In the workplace, that translates to leaders who empower their teams, act with integrity, and center mission over ego. So what do these 3 ladies teach us? They model traits that business leaders need today, such as clarity, staying grounded in your values; consistency, follow through on your commitments; empathy, leading with emotional intelligence; and timely action, deciding with purpose even in uncertainty. Chapter 3 of the book also emphasizes courage as a foundation to leadership. When stakes are high, we need leaders willing to step up with strength and integrity. Joshua 1:9 captures this mindset well. It says, "Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." So how does this apply to business? These women represent leadership competencies that directly impact performance. The first is to be a strategic thinker under pressure. The second thing is to be resilient in the face of adversity. The third is to exercise empathy and emotional intelligence. Fourth is to have a servant leadership mindset that develops others. And the last is to have decisiveness even when things are uncertain. Whether you're leading a team, responding to change, or facing a tough ethical call, these traits will guide you. Next, we'll explore how empathy and integrity form the ethical foundation for building trust and strong workplace culture. Welcome to our next topic: empathy, integrity, and servant leadership. While boldness drives action, empathy and integrity shape its impact. As both the book and our course emphasize, these are not soft skills. These are strategic tools. These are strategic tools that build trust, loyalty, and long-term performance. Chapter 3 of the book tells us ethical leadership begins with internal alignment, knowing your values and living them out consistently. The book highlights 3 essentials: clarity, congruence, and accountability. In business, this translates to value-driven leadership, making decisions, and managing people in ways that reinforce trust and transparency. Let's look at Ruth. Despite grief and displacement, she chose to remain loyal over prioritizing her self-interest. She said, "Wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people." What she's modeling really is this idea of ethical resilience, staying grounded in her values while honoring others. In a business context, that's what builds stakeholder trust and team alignment, especially during transitions or uncertainty. Mary, the mother of Jesus, modeled servant leadership without status or recognition. She chose to lead with humility, strength, and purpose. This relates to Matthew 20:26, which says, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." This reminds us that true leadership empowers others. It's not about your ego, it's about lifting people up, staying authentic, and serving your mission. That's the kind of leadership that sustains organizations through both growth and hardship. Let's revisit Esther, this time through the lens of emotional intelligence. Her bold decision to speak to the king wasn't just strategic, it was rooted in empathy. She understood her people's pain. She paused to reflect and acted with poise. This is emotional, intelligent leadership, combining strategic thinking with compassion. As we've studied, leaders with high EQ build trust, navigate conflict, and make sound decisions, especially in high-stakes environments. Eve's story, on the other hand, gives us a warning. Her decision to act outside of God's direction shows how quickly leadership breaks down when values and actions don't align. This book calls this incongruence, something we've seen in business when credibility erodes and culture suffers. Misalignments between your stated values and actual behavior has real consequences for team morale, performance, and trust. At their best, ethical leaders aren't focused on power, they're facilitators of growth. They coach, empower, and invest in others. That's what servant leadership is all about. So let's recap some key takeaways. The first is that ethical leadership is deeply personal. It starts with clarity about your values. The second thing is that empathy fuels connection and motivation, which is very, very important. Third, integrity builds long-term trust. And finally, servant leaders don't demand respect. They earn it by giving first. When leaders like Ruth, Mary, and Esther lead with empathy and integrity, you too can create a workplace where people feel valued, respected, and empowered. Let's move on to our third topic, which is about resilience and emotional intelligence. In our last section, we explored empathy and integrity as the ethical foundation of leadership. Now we'll discuss two internal competencies that sustain long-term effectiveness, which is resilience and emotional intelligence. These are not optional leadership traits. They're essential for navigating change, pressure, and personal setbacks. Both Bold Woman of the Bible and our course reinforce that leaders need inner strength just as much as external strategy. Let's start with a reminder from Romans 5, verse 3 through 4, which says, "Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." In other words, leadership growth happens through challenge, not comfort. That's what makes resilience so crucial. Take Ruth, for example. Despite grief and cultural isolation, she remained loyal and purpose-driven and eventually became a foundational figure in Jesus's lineage. Her story reflects emotional steadiness and ethical resilience, traits we've studied as critical for leaders navigating volatility without compromising their values. Additionally, women leaders often face added pressure. It might be greater scrutiny, pay gaps, and fewer advancement opportunities. In these cases, resilience becomes not just personal, it's strategic. It allows leaders to reframe setbacks as growth moments and to stay focused under pressure. Resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about growing through what you go through. Now let's get to the second pillar on emotional intelligence. This covers self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. These aren't just soft skills, they're strategic leadership tools. Having a high EQ enables leaders to navigate conflict, build trust, and lead people, not just processes, especially under stress. Confident leaders often have strong EQ, but confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It actually comes from being authentic, preparing, and being supportive. This book offers several practical ways to go about this kind of confidence. For example, celebrating your small wins. Secondly, reframing negative self-talk. Number 3, visualizing the path to success. And fourth, tracking your own growth over time. These strategies align with what we've learned about self-efficacy, having a positive mindset, and being mentally resilient. Lastly, let's not overlook your well-being. Leadership is demanding. Without care, burnout becomes a serious risk. So here are some takeaways. Number 1 is that resilient leaders turn obstacles into growth opportunities. Secondly, emotional intelligence fosters balance, connection, and better decision-making. Third, let's not view self-care as a luxury. Self-care is a leadership discipline. Together, resilience and EQ enables leaders to lead with calm, clarity, and consistency, even in adversity. Welcome to the fourth topic, collaboration and inclusion. In our last section, we explored resilience and emotional intelligence, and now we are going to focus on the relational side of leadership, building strong, innovative teams through shared leadership and inclusive practices. Collaboration isn't just working together, it's aligning around a common purpose, supporting one another, and creating space for every voice to contribute. It's what drives sustainable team success. Let's begin with Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 through 10. 2 are better than 1. If either falls, one can help the other up. This verse captures the value of mutual support, a core concept behind effective teamwork, psychological safety, and accountability. Deborah, who we previously highlighted for strategic courage, also excelled as a collaborative leader. She delegated, trusted others, and shared responsibility, reflecting what the book calls inclusive leadership grounded in humility. This ties directly to what we've studied, distributed leadership, sharing decision-making to increase engagement from others and motivation across a team. We also meet Beatrice, who is a modern example of inclusive leadership. She led her customer care team through change by recasting the mission, facilitating cross-functional meetings, and ensuring everyone, from leadership to the frontline workers, and made sure they understood their roles. Her success shows how clear, inclusive communication can help foster buy-in, transparency, and better performance. This echoes what we've learned. Great leaders don't just deliver messages, they create understanding and ownership. Collaboration requires emotionally intelligent communication. Leaders must not only speak clearly, they must listen with empathy, adapt to different styles, and create space for others to contribute. The book emphasizes rapport building through storytelling, humor, and informal moments. These actions build trust and psychological safety, encouraging people to speak up, share ideas, and solve problems together. Mentorship and coaching also play a key role. They don't just grow individuals, they deepen team trust and improve leader self-awareness. Both the book and our course stress that mentoring is mutual, not just top-down. It's about learning, providing feedback, and sharing in the development. Inclusive leaders also know how to share their power. They actually welcome diverse input. They actually delegate authority and create pathways for others to lead. This approach uncovers blind spots, fuels innovation, and drives broader team motivation. So what's the outcome? Collaboration multiplies impact. When teams are aligned around purpose, they become more resilient, more creative, and more effective. They don't just complete tasks, they flourish. Let's close out with our key takeaways. The first is that inclusive leadership starts with clear communication and shared purpose. Secondly, mentorship and rapport building strengthen engagement and trust. Third, true collaboration multiplies impact and builds resilient teams. By embracing every voice and contribution, leaders create teams that not only perform, but thrive through shared success. Welcome to our final topic, redefining leadership and gender equity. Through scripture and history, women have challenged limitations, not by copying traditional power, but by leading with conviction, faith, and integrity. Regardless of gender, most teams include women, so it's essential we take an inclusive approach to developing leadership. The book Bold Women of the Bible shows how women overcame patriarchal barriers and cultural bias to lead with lasting impact. One example comes from John 8, where a woman caught in adultery is brought forward for stoning. Jesus interrupts and says, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone." This moment exposes gendered double standards and models what we now call equity-based leadership, challenging bias while protecting dignity. Galatians 3:28 reinforces the principle. It says, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Leadership isn't defined by gender or title, it's about purpose, calling, and character. Our course emphasizes that inclusive leadership systems aren't just ethical, they're actually essential for innovation and long-term success. Removing barriers helps unlock more of an organization's talent and potential. Let's close out with some takeaways. The first is that leadership transcends gender. It's rooted in purpose, faith, and authenticity. Secondly, we must challenge outdated norms and build systems of equity and inclusion. Third, success isn't even about titles. It's about living your calling with courage. When women lead authentically and advocate for others, they do more than succeed. They redefine leadership, and in doing so, they transform teams, organizations, and cultures for the better. Now that we've covered the training portion of this, let's dive into the handout, which incorporates all of these discussed takeaways plus course concepts into one cohesive roadmap, which is styled as a board game. This handout is styled like a board game for ease of use and fun. As you can see on the left-hand side, we have named each section according to the week that we're in. This is a 12-week program that can be extended longer or shorter depending on your organization's needs. Each couple of weeks, you have a new set of items to do within your organization. Each section involves different players who are listed on the right-hand side. Managers and leaders will consistently have to play a role each and every week, though other stakeholders of the organization will need to be pulled in at different times. Each department or team, depending on what you want to do, will have their own game piece or pawn, and your job is to be the first to complete all of the checklist items. You get assigned a checklist item by pulling a card from the deck. Each card is color-coded and titled for the appropriate week, so there's no shuffling involved. Once you and your team complete a task, you move your piece to the next square. As each task gets completed within a 1 to 2 week time frame, you continue to move throughout the board. Whichever team or department is able to complete the game with more efficiency wins. This helps to motivate people to stay on course and not give up, and make it a friendly competition all the while. Let's flip to the back of the game board for a better idea of what each card will task you to do. As mentioned before, you'll receive tasks on the back of each game card, which is uniquely tied to a step in the process and a week. For example, Phase 1, which is weeks 1 through 2, is to build leadership foundations, which should take about a couple of weeks to complete. In this case, players will loop in HR, executive coaches, and your team's leader. You'll complete an emotions and values quiz, then your managers will write what they learned from taking the quiz. A coach or a leader will discuss those takeaways with them, and a workshop must be completed where you discuss the importance of honesty, kindness, and confidence as a leader. The format continues in a way like this, where each team will be tasked to loop in certain team members or different teams in general to collaboratively move through each phase. For more instructions, please refer to the link in slide number 2 of this presentation. I also encourage teams to celebrate milestones as well. Teams can host mini celebrations or recognitions after each completed phase. Also, try to use some positive reinforcement, such as food and snacks. So let's just make sure that we understand how this is practically applicable. The first is that it helps create structured leadership development. By doing this over the course of 12 weeks, this is a very ideal way to build leadership skills within an organization, especially if you're onboarding new managers, coaching mid-level leaders, or aligning executives' teams. The second importance of this is to create team alignment and trust building. This encourages cross-functional collaboration and open communication. The tasks, which include things like team building, feedback channels, and goal setting, help to promote psychological safety and a shared purpose. 3 is ethical decision-making practice. This provides hands-on scenarios to help employees spot biases, evaluate ethical dilemmas, and make values-driven decisions, which is critical in today's business climate. The 4th is improved organizational culture, which reinforces transparency, empathy, integrity, and accountability. The 5th is inclusive, scalable training. This makes this development for leadership accessible across all departments, not just upper management, and it's also flexible enough for a remote, hybrid, or in-person team environment. Lastly, it's measurable. You can measure the progress and keep people engaged by gamifying the process and giving people a way to track participation and completion of learning goals. In conclusion, I'm really happy to be able to have shared this with you. It's very empowering to hear the stories of people like Esther, Ruth, and Deborah and Mary, who show us that leadership is not about status. It's about service, courage, and conviction. Furthermore, ethically, emotionally intelligent, and resilient leaders can create cultures of trust, inclusion, and innovation within an organization. This training module brings timeless biblical wisdom into the workplace, something that can be difficult to come by in modern times. So this helps teams not just grow in skill, but in character rooted in faith. As we move forward, let us lead with humility, act with integrity, and empower others do the same. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this, which is a quote from Esther 4, verse 14. Here are my references. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.